Newcastle United miss out on another signing. We've all heard this a lot over recent weeks, and no smoke without fire and all that. Like, some of the media reports are true, but I'm gonna have a look at the media reports that have came out over this summer, because I think there's a pattern starting to emerge here with the reporting of Newcastle over the past few months. So the main theme of this window of the reporting from the media has been the players that we've missed out on. But before we get into the players that we've missed out on, I want to look at some other stuff that's been reported on, because you only have to look as far as the recent Ekitike Isak comparison that was put out by Sky Sports to see just how badly they're not even trying to hide the agenda that they're pushing. Like, everyone in football knows that part of football is about the momentum that can be created around a club. So if you're getting lots of positive press, lots of positive media, everyone starts to think well of a club, the players start to be confident, things start to go well for a club. If you can change the narrative and make a club seem more negative, they generally tend to go towards a more negative trajectory. Not every case, but it is a factor in the way a club performs. So when you see Sky Sports posting a comparison of Ekitike and Isak and how good they are as a striker, and they choose all statistics that are in Ekitike's favour, and bearing in mind, for a striker, they choose to leave out goals for a fucking striker. If that isn't them doing exactly what I've just said and trying to create a narrative around a player to try and better help his chances of success, then I don't fucking know what is. Because realistically, the actual narrative around that player, and I can cherry pick as well, is that he was signed for 14 million a year ago. He has a worse shot conversion rate than Darwin Núñez, and he has scored less goals than Isak in a worse league. Now, I'm not saying Ekitike is a bad player. He's a very good player. In my last video, I was quite excited that we were going to sign him. But this video isn't about whether Ekitike is a good player or not. This video is about the clear bias in reporting from a mainstream, like, meant to be neutral journalistic media publication. And it's honestly insane how something that we don't have a choice whether we pay for or not. Like, if we want to watch our team, they basically have a monopoly of the market, in the sense of they have pretty much the majority of the football games. If we want to watch our football team play, which we do, we don't really have a choice, and they know that, we have to sign up to their shite. And if we're forced to watch it, the last thing we want is to have other teams' agendas pushed onto us. The sooner another company comes and rivals Sky Sports, the better, in my opinion. Because cherry picking to compare a striker and not including goals is just fucking wild. Like, as I said, I could cherry pick as well, but like, even if I was cherry picking, I am biased. I'm a Newcastle fan. I am going to be biased towards my team to a certain extent. Being a fan of a club, it's almost impossible to not have a level of bias. But anytime I'm comparing any players, I try and make it as unbiased as possible. And the reason I try and make it as unbiased as possible, and could never do a striker comparison and not at least put fucking goals in there, is because I would be conscious of the fact that as soon as I do something like that, I might be able to push my little narrative to, you know, a bunch of idiots who just read a headline. But outside of that, the majority of football fans that are interested in, you know, looking at things further, to all them football fans, it just completely harms my credibility. If I then, you know, choose to compare two strikers and don't include goals because it doesn't further my narrative, then anything that I'm saying going forward, it shows that I'm clearly just trying to push a narrative. There is the other side to it. Maybe they're just trying to rage bait for engagement, getting comments and stuff like that. And I get rage baiting. I understand why it's done. I think it's fine. Like, it is what it is. And I think it's, you know, it's okay at a certain standard. But the people that can't do rage baiting are people who are a neutral media source. They're meant to be a neutral media source. They're just meant to report on what happens in football equally, neutrally, not fucking cherry picking statistics to try and push a narrative in that way. As I said, we have no option but to pay for them. If you don't like my narrative, you don't have to watch my YouTube channel, that's fine, but we have to pay for Sky Sports to watch our teams. And I don't think I'm the only one, because it's not just Newcastle fans. Like, you know, one of my biggest videos, the one that kind of started this channel off really, was me saying the Big Six was over, and me just basically going on about how I can't fucking stand the mainstream media push. And we had Villa fans, Forest fans, like, you know, fans of many other clubs that are just sick of this Big Six fucking bollocks. Sky Sports just constantly pushing their shite. As I said, the sooner a competitor comes to the table that are less in bed with the fucking Sky Six, the better. But anyway, let's look at some more media reporting of Newcastle this window. So, as Newcastle fans, from day one of the window, we have known that Isak is not for sale for any less than 150 million. Realistically, probably not even for sale for 150 million. We all knew from the start that for Isak to be sold, it's probably going to take somewhere around the 200 million mark. It has to be an offer that we just flat out cannot refuse. Literally crazy money offer. And despite that being common knowledge amongst the entire Newcastle fan base, all summer we have seen Isak linked away for 100 million, 120 million, 130 million. All these reports, literal non-starters, not even worth writing about, reporting about, even fucking reading in the first place, because it is all quite literally just fabricated out of someone's imagination. So you have to ask, what is the motivation behind fabricating these stories? Because we know that these reports aren't true. We've heard it directly from the club. Eddie Howe has had an interview after there was multiple reports that said Liverpool has approached us and we're trying to do a deal for 120 million. Eddie Howe had an interview and he said there has not been a formal approach for Isak. So where the fuck are these stories coming from? Who's making them up and why are they making them up? Initially, it was all with Arsenal. There was fucking memes for ages that was taking the piss out of Arsenal fans because of their embarrassing behaviour, just acting as if Isak was just one of their players, essentially. Like he was on loan to us or something. Credit to Arsenal fans, they seem to have eventually given up and moved on and just accepted that they're not getting him. And then just as Arsenal fans give up, just as the media can't push the narrative to them anymore because they're just like, look, you've been pushing it to us for too long now. We're fed up with it. It's not fucking happening. It's clearly not happening. It hasn't happened yet. It doesn't look like it's happening. You know, Newcastle had finally managed to get through to them. It's not fucking happening. So the Arsenal fans finally gave up, and then the media were like, oh, fuck, they've given up. We can't push it on them anymore. So there's no traction behind that anymore. Oh, we need to push it on someone else. So then they take another set of fans, they make reports about that club to try and link them with Isak to get them behind the bandwagon of selling Isak, basically. And then what's happened there is we've potentially, I don't know whether we've made a move or not to potentially put that to bed, whether it was 4D chess played by us or whether it's not, that's still up for debate. All we know that happened is we made a bid for Ekitike of around 70 million and we knew that was under their asking price. Liverpool then jumped into action, made a power play and said if they can't have Isak, they're going to sign our top target in Ekitike. So we as a club told the local journalists that we were then making another bid that was at what Frankfurt wanted for Ekitike and that we were basically about to sign him. Liverpool then seemingly panicked because that would have fucked over their power play. So they then went and made a bid for Ekitike. We then told all the local journalists that that wasn't actually the case, that we weren't making a bid for Ekitike, that never happened, and we weren't close to signing him, and that we're now not actually interested in signing Ekitike. So we went in with a bid that was never going to be accepted. We knew it was never going to be accepted. And then we made it seem more advanced than it was. And then as soon as Liverpool went in, we were like, yeah, we were actually interested, so yeah. And what we do know is that Keith Downey said on one of his videos, as one of the, you know, local journalists, the Sky Sports News reporters who actually seems to like the club and doesn't seem to push a negative agenda. He said he's unsure why the club chose to release that they were further on in talks with Ekitike and then went back on that. He's unsure as to why that happened. And again, it's up for debate. I'm not saying we did play 4D chess. We might have been in for Ekitike genuinely. But the only reason I can see to lie about that is to basically bait Liverpool into making that bid that they've made and to essentially bait them into signing Ekitike, which if that was what happened, that is a genius move. That is some fucking 4D chess that's been played right there. It had me completely fooled because I was making a video last week where I was saying, oh, I was trying to avoid all the Ekitike rumors thinking they weren't real. And then I was like, but it's starting to look real. I'm starting to get quite excited about it. So it had me completely fooled. I'm not saying I wasn't completely fooled as well. But what we do know is the outcome here is that Ekitike is now probably going to Liverpool. I think he's just been for his medical. So they're going to be hoying 80 million on a player that, as I said, has a worse conversion rate than Darwin Núñez and scored less goals than Isak in a worse league. They're also going to be chucking him on apparently £200,000 a week. As I said, Sky Sports cherry picking can work both ways. At least mine includes fucking goals. But ultimately, once Arsenal eventually sign Gyökeres, or whoever they end up signing in the end, and Liverpool do get this deal done, not only have we likely kept Isak this season, but I think a lot of us had resigned to the idea that Isak would probably leave at some point over the next sort of 2 years. Granted, he could still go to like Barcelona maybe, although they have just taken on Rashford's mental wages, so I'm also not particularly too sure about that one either. But the point being, it's even less likely he leaves now in the future as well, because all of the teams that could potentially afford him have now gone and, you know, got their striker and have now also sort of spent a lot of money on their sort of marquee signing of a striker. So now that pretty much every club that was potentially able to afford him is now out of the running, all the, you know, European clubs that, you know, can offer European football, you know, Champions League football, the ones that have, you know, like good amounts of money, you know, there's not that many clubs that can, you know, afford to hoy out 150 odd million on a striker. There's only a select few of them that can. And as I said, pretty much most of them have been ruled out. Real Madrid have got Mbappe. Barcelona have just put Rashford on probably like 500k a week or something stupid. I don't know the actual numbers on that one. It might not be that mental, but he'll still be on some pretty mega wages. Arsenal are probably going to sign Gyökeres. Liverpool have signed Ekitike for about 80 million. Chelsea have just signed 2 more strikers, although you wouldn't put it past them to just go keep on signing more strikers and potentially just buy Isak anyway. City have got Haaland, and yeah, the point is that there's not many clubs out there that need Isak, can afford Isak, and can attract Isak. Like, ultimately, you kind of need all three really before you're going to sign Isak, and most of them in Europe have gone out the window. So what do the media do next? Because they need to keep the speculation going. So now Saudi want to sign Isak because it isn't a European club and no one else really in Europe can afford him. So how do we keep this speculation going? Where is the only place left that, you know, spending 200 million on a player is just common practice? Saudi, of course. So now apparently Isak is linked to going to Saudi for like 200 million. Realistically, again, I think it's probably not true. It's just been, you know, just spawned out of nowhere, just like all the other crap was. And I think the only other possible explanation as to where this is coming from is it's potentially coming from Isak's agent, because we are, I think, in contract negotiations with Isak. So he might just be trying to create this media shitstorm just to get Isak a better deal and thus gets himself more money, because he will be on some kind of commission for whatever deal he gets for Isak. But anyway, with the whole agenda of Isak trying to be sold, you know, I've not seen a player more guaranteed to be sold for Newcastle since Gordon was last season for Liverpool, and look where he is now. And now, granted, Gordon's performances were affected the following season due to the speculation. He's came out and said that. And then obviously it is a little bit worrying when we've apparently sent Isak home so that he's not sat on the bench for the Celtic game because of the speculation and how it might be affecting him. However, I don't think that that's going to be the same, because first of all, Gordon's still here. Isak will still be there. I mean, we've been told by Eddie Howe he's confident that Isak is happy and will be staying. But second of all, I think Isak is a different type of mentality of player than Gordon is. Isak is very much like, when you saw him score that goal in the cup final, plenty of other players will have just been like elated. Like, you saw Jacob Murphy, who assisted the goal, running around like a mad cunt. But Isak, even in that moment of absolute chaos from the fans, like Wembley was literally shaking, he was still calm. He was celebrating, but he was still calm. Just like, he has a world-class level mentality. As many people have said about that moment, if he hadn't have kept his calm in that moment and he'd have gone and lost his head, like, him keeping his calm is what potentially won us that final, because he is able to take such a moment of chaos and just bring everyone back down to earth by him handling himself in that way. We knew before we signed Gordon that he's very hot-headed. Like, he nearly had a fight with Trippier the season before. We know Isak isn't like that. Isak isn't a hot-headed player. He has a cold mentality. So all this crap about, oh, he must be unsettled in the same way that Gordon was and whatever, like, I don't buy that for a second. Again, we can take Eddie Howe for what he said face value, and he has just sent him home because he just thinks that's probably better for for him doesn't necessarily mean that Isak is actually unsettled. There's just really not much point in him being sat on the bench and all of the media coverage of the game just being, you know, every 5 minutes it just cuts to Isak, or does he look happy, does he look sad? Essentially, the less we put him in the media, the less people actually know. And then we're just going off what we know, which is seemingly we know that he's happy. And that's all we need to know. As we know, the setup at Newcastle now likes to keep their cards close to their chest, and that's just a kind of an element of what I think they were doing with that decision. Now, as for what I said at the start of the video, let's have a look at some of the players we've missed out on. Matheus Cunha, we never made a bid. He has the highest amount of time walking in the league, which is just not an Eddie Howe player at all. He's been reported to have attitude problems, gets red cards all the time, which granted, João Pedro has attitude problems and gets red carded quite a bit as well, but the highlight for me was the walking statistics. Like that is not Eddie Howe at all. So it's hard to believe we were ever actually in for him. Maybe at best a quick call to inquire, you know, what sort of price he's going for, but that doesn't mean he was topping any lists for, you know, targets. If you've ever made a big purchase, let's say you're buying a house, you'll have a look at similar sized houses on the market, you know, similar locations, you know, same amount of bedrooms, stuff like that. Like, he has a lot of, you know, skills that we were looking for in terms of their versatility, in terms of, you know, like the goal contributions. As I said, you know, when you're buying a house, you might look for something in the same location with, you know, the same amount of bedrooms, bathrooms, whatever else. But all you're doing there is just trying to judge the market to see, you know, what sort of price you should be paying. We may have potentially inquired to see what the price was, and that isn't even confirmed. That's not concrete. That's, again, just reports. But that doesn't mean that he was ever the top of any list. That just might mean that he was on a list. And Mbeumo, I think same thing happened again. I think potentially a little bit more interest than Cunha, but I still wouldn't say anything concrete in terms of, you know, I mean, we know that there wasn't ever a bid put in. We know that for certain. Delap, I think the same thing happened again. You know, there was potentially a level of interest, just seeing what the sort of market is like. Also, as we were seeing what the market is like, you know, what sort of price someone like Delap was going to cost, as we were looking into that, he already decided he wanted to stay in London. Fair enough. João Pedro, I do believe that was a genuine interest. We know that there was bids. So that one, just to quickly highlight how I'm not being just biased here, I do believe that one was a genuine interest and we did lose out on him. There is the caveat of the fact that, you know, he probably wanted to stay in London. But if, you know, someone wants to say that Chelsea is a better prospect than ours or whatever, then fair enough. Like, each to your own. Ekitike, I've already explained. We don't really know. Obviously, there was a bid there. It could have been genuine interest, or it could have just been 4D chess on our part. We don't really know. So whether we've missed out on that one is debatable. There is things to point either way. So yeah, that's sort of out in the open a bit. And Trafford, again, another genuine interest that we haven't lost out on yet, but might be about to lose out on to City. Now, this one, ultimately, Burnley are playing hardball on the price. They're holding out for 40 million, and City have a buyback clause for 40 million as well. So I think in some ever so slight way, that gives them a ever so slightly stronger negotiation position just because of the buyback clause, but then also not really, because it's the same price that they're asking for from us. But even if the buyback clause doesn't actually give them a stronger position, they're in a stronger position in general to sign Trafford anyway, because they are more likely to just say, yeah, okay, take 40 million, because they're not governed by PSR in the way that we are, in the sense, like, obviously everyone is apparently, but, you know, obviously their revenue was able to be juiced absolutely sky high before all the PSR strictness came in, or potentially cheated through the 115 allegations. We don't know yet. So again, out in the open. But the point is, they can just risk hoying 40 million on Trafford. We can't do that because we have to be much more stringent with the money that we spend, because ultimately 40 million for a not really Premier League proven goalkeeper is a lot of money. And because of our PSR position, we will only sign players if it's a very good deal. We essentially won't and can't afford to be extorted for any amount. So if anyone tries to sort of extort us with a transfer fee, we essentially just have to say no and walk away. And as I said, 40 million for an un-Premier League proven goalkeeper really is a lot of money, considering Kelleher, who is Premier League proven, has just been sold for 25 million. The reason I mentioned Kelleher is because he's also a young goalkeeper. So yeah, realistically, you know, apparently we've missed out on every player under the sun, but we've actually missed out that we know on João Pedro and potentially James Trafford. But if the media have their way, then if Grealish or Sancho signs for someone next week, we'll have also missed out on them. Now, I know things are looking a little bit frustrating and bleak at the moment, but there is still 6 weeks left of the window. Unfortunately, Paul Mitchell did leave us in an absolute heap of shite, which, can I add, by the way, is an absolute bell end of a move from him. He basically sat around all year getting paid, doing very little, and then as soon as it came to the part of the year where he actually has to fucking do something, he fucks off and has just essentially left Eddie absolutely in the shit. And I know there's a lot of talk to say that we should have replaced him already, but to me it seems that the owners would rather take the time to make sure that they get this appointment right than be rushed into just putting someone in place just because of the fact that it's this transfer window. Especially when you think that the last 2 appointments that we did make, both at the time when we made them, seemed like great appointments, and both of them have fucked us over. So I think their due diligence and interview process will have become incredibly more stringent now, having been burnt twice already. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, are you still managing to remain positive, or have you had enough now? Are you starting to turn and become a bit more negative? I'm still, remaining very positive. There's 6 weeks left of the transfer window. We've still got Champions League football next season. The amount of times over the past few years that everything has looked very bleak and we still keep going on from strength to strength to strength. We have finally signed the right winger that we've been waiting since the takeover to sign. Yes, we do need a few more signings. And we have managed to shift a couple of the players that I don't want to be disrespectful towards, because they were incredible servants to the club, but they are players that throughout the seasons, when there was the more frustrating games, the majority of the fan base were saying they need to be gone and they need to be replaced with a higher level player. So everything that we have done so far in the window has been positive. The problem is, to a certain extent, as I know, some of the things that haven't been done yet, but there is still 6 weeks left. The only thing that potentially isn't a positive is the 4-0 loss to Celtic, and on that, for the giveaway, there was no winners again. Also on the Celtic game, yes, it was a 4-0 loss, but it was also their 5th preseason game and our 2nd preseason game. Earlier in the week for that game, they were playing Sporting. We were whitewater rafting and eating fucking schnitzels. So, they were clearly much more prepared in their preseason for something like that. We're a little bit behind on our preseason. So yeah, I'm not particularly too worried about that result. Now, quickly back on the giveaway, because obviously nobody won it, that means that it will carry over onto the Arsenal game. I'm not adding to the giveaway at the moment because it's preseason, so it will just be £50 for every game. If someone does win it though, it will stay £50 instead of going back to 25. So just £50 per game for every preseason game if anyone wins it. So Arsenal this weekend, get your predictions on the pinned comment if you want to be in with a chance to win a £50 Google Play gift card. All details for the giveaway will be in the description, and then the rollovers from the £50, so adding £25 per week, that will start again once the season starts again. I do want to say, actually, for the Celtic game, it was a bit of a shit show for the 10,000 fans that turned up. Obviously, I understand their frustration because, that's a lot of support, a very impressive support, making the journey up to Scotland, and for 10,000 fans to do so, I don't really think that the performance was deserved of that level of support. That was incredible support and a fucking awful performance. But I'm just saying, going forward, I aren't particularly worried about that loss, because I think it was, as I say, explainable from the fact that they were just further ahead in their preseason preparations than we are. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're nearly at 5,000 subscribers now, which is absolutely mental. Did not think that, only like a few months into my YouTube journey, this channel's YouTube journey, to be 5,000 subscribers in is just absolutely mind-blowing. And I genuinely am mega grateful for every single one of you that subscribes and helps support the channel. All the comments on the videos, like, some of them genuinely make my day. Like, there's so many people that are telling me how much they enjoy the channel and stuff. And for someone who, the main thing I was battling with when starting the channel was like, why would anyone want to listen to me speak? Like, why would anyone want to listen to my opinion on things? Like, for people to genuinely say that they appreciate my opinion on, and the way that I articulate kind of the things that I'm thinking and saying and whatever, like, for people to be saying that constantly and saying how much they're enjoying the channel, like, it really does mean a lot to me. So again, thank you to everyone for that. And once again, hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.